Well, I'm Michael Thrasher. I have the privilege of serving as Dean of the College of Communication and Fine Arts here at Troy University, located in Troy, Alabama. Well, in my career, I've had the privilege of traveling extensively in North America, but also quite a bit in Europe as well. I've been able to present at conferences in places like Sweden, Spain, Belgium, and other places. Visited the United Kingdom a number of times and had traveled extensively in both England and Wales and Scotland as well. This past year, I had the opportunity to take part in the Fulbright program. And the Fulbright program in the United States has a very significant history and has had a lot of impact on global relations. The Fulbright program was created shortly after World War II, when the nations of the world looked around and saw a world in chaos, in rubble, in ruins, and many people looked at horror with what had happened during the World War. And there were commitments to try to increase global understanding, communication, partnership amongst peoples and cultures. And the Fulbright program was designed to advance that goal. It was created by a senator from the state of Arkansas, Senator Fulbright, who had this idea of what we might call cultural diplomacy or citizen diplomacy, in which people from the United States could travel to other countries to teach, to do research, to live with the people of that country, to build relationships and connections, and also so that people from other countries could come to the United States and do the same thing, teach, do research, perform creative activity, live and immerse themselves within the culture of this country. And that through this, people could grow in their understanding of one another, friendships, partnerships, cultural understanding would be advanced. So I had the privilege last year of taking part in a Fulbright program in which I spent about 2.5 weeks in Germany with other administrators from American universities. It was a group of about 17 people from across the country. There were people from the East Coast of the U.S., the West Coast of the U.S., the South, the Midwest, people who worked in all different kinds of universities, small liberal arts colleges, public state universities, large research institutions, and so forth. And we had the privilege of spending about 2.5 weeks over there learning about the German higher education system, how it works, how it's put together, what its goals are, how it operates from a logistical and financial point of view. It was fascinating to be able to see a system that in many ways is parallel to the American system, but also is quite unique and quite different. It has its own peculiarities and its own way of doing things. It's a country that has a long history in higher education, much longer than what we have here in the United States. To be able to see institutions that go back to the 1400s, for example, was immensely interesting and insightful for us as Americans to be immersed in that culture. We had the privilege of visiting numerous institutions, both in the city of Berlin, as well as in other parts of the country. I spent about 3 days in a small town about 2 hours north of Germany, near the border with Poland, visiting a university that was founded in the 1400s. And we were able to spend time there meeting with students, meeting with faculty, meeting with administrators, getting to know the institution and how it operates. And it was very eye-opening and a really life-changing experience for us. And there are many strong similarities between the German system of higher education and the American system. In fact, in many ways, the American system inherited many attributes from England, particularly Oxford and Cambridge, from Scotland, and from Germany. Those institutions help to provide a model upon which the American system is based. That being said, there are some significant differences. One of the most obvious and most notable differences is that in Germany, higher education is essentially tuition free for all students who might attend there. That alone really sets it apart from the US, where we talk extensively about the price of higher education, funding higher education, student loan crisis that we have here in the US, and so forth. It's very, very different there. If you are admitted into an institution in most parts of the country, you attend at very low or no cost of tuition. So the cost of attending college really becomes just the cost of living while you're there. And even then, there are subsidies provided by the state to help cover housing costs and things of that nature. So accessibility there is very, very different. And I would say it's a different orientation and a different mindset. The idea that higher education and an educated population is a societal good and something that society collectively wants to support and wants to invest in. So that's maybe one of the most obvious and most notable differences. There also are differences in the types of institutions that are out there. For example, in Germany, there are traditional research universities that look very similar to American research universities that offer doctoral programs and prepare people for academic careers. But parallel to that are universities of what they call applied sciences, which are more geared towards business, economics, that provide extensive internships for students and so on and so forth. And those are very appealing to students in the nation of Germany. These are not one is better, one is worse. It's just about what would you rather do. If you are a student aspiring to a career, do you imagine yourself following a more academic pathway? Do you imagine yourself working more in the business world? What suits you? What fits your aspirations? And they have institutions that are designed to speak to those particular needs in society. Well, one of the fascinating things about Germany is its history and the fact that Germany has a rich, illustrious history of amazing achievement in science, in culture, in art, and in music. And Germany also has dark chapters in its history as well, particularly in the 20th century. And that contrast, both the wonderful aspects of its history and the dark aspects, are very evident, especially in Berlin, where we spent the majority of our time. You could see those relics everywhere that we went. We were able to see significant remaining portions of the Berlin Wall, which for decades separated the city into a communist sector and a Western-supported capitalist sector. We were able to see the famous checkpoint Charlie, which was the line between the American-occupied sector and the Soviet-occupied sector. It's a section where, as they told us at one point in time, the Soviet tanks were on one side, the American tanks were on the other, separated by a few yards. And the conflict was that close to getting out of hand. And we stood right on that spot where that happened. And so the residue of that, you still see that in the community there, in the culture. It leaves scars and it's still deeply embedded. Even now it's been over 30 years since the Berlin Wall fell, but the residue is still there. And then, of course, there are tremendous markers that remain from the era of National Socialism, the Nazi era of the 1930s and the 1940s. It was very hard to escape that history. We saw memorials to victims of the Nazi era. One of the most notable memorials is the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe. which is just a few blocks from the Brandenburg Gate and the Reichstag, the center of the German parliament. It's a deeply emotional, disturbing, unsettling memorial. It consists of a full block of concrete slabs of various heights that is designed to be unsettling and unnerving and somewhat claustrophobic, to remind us of what happened between 1933 and 1945. And I tend to believe that the world needs to be reminded of that dark chapter, because we have many lessons to learn from that. We saw memorials to other segments of society, the disabled, and others who had been persecuted during the Nazi era. We saw sections of the city that still had signs posted as memorials to careers and professions that were prohibited if you were Jewish. We even saw some structures, columns, buildings, and so forth, that still had pock marks from machine gun fire from 1945. That still exists. You can still see those scars. And so seeing all of that, contemplating that, reflecting on that history, it's important, I think, for us to remember what happened there, what took place, and how that continues to affect the world today. Yeah, I think it's always helpful and important for us to reflect on what humans are capable of doing to one another. It's part of history, and because it is part of history, we want to always be aware and be on guard against those kinds of things happening again in the future. I wouldn't want to dwell just on those dark chapters, because within that society, there is tremendous beauty as well. It's also a society that produced some of the greatest works of art and music imaginable. We took time while I was there to take a train out to Leipzig. Now, Leipzig was an hour and a half, maybe by train, from Berlin. Leipzig has a long history, particularly in music. And it was important to me to go there because I was able to visit the St. Thomas Church in Leipzig, which was home to many famous musicians, most notably Johann Sebastian Bach, who lived from 1685 to 1750. I was able to go there to the St. Thomas Church, where Bach had been the choral master, the musician, the musical leader of the church. I was able to go into the church and see where Bach is buried in the church, and while we're there, listen to a Bach cantata performed right there in the St. Thomas Church. I was sitting 20 feet from his grave.
That's incredible.
And to experience that work. And Bach was someone who, on his musical scores, had a habit of always signing the end of the score with the initials SDG, Soli Deo Gloria, to God only glory. It was truly beautiful to be in a room that was jam-packed, that every seat was full. It was a Saturday afternoon. It was chilly, cold, rainy out, and yet the venue was filled with people who were intently listening to the music. The performance was exceptionally good, very high quality. And every person, I recall, was completely focused on what was happening in the room. And I found myself looking more into the rafters of the church, the same rafters that were there in 1750 that heard when Sebastian Bach was there leading those cantatas. And to hear the beauty of that cantata in this beautiful church with this rich history also tells us that the society there and societies around the world have great capacity to create beauty as well.